have to back up a bit here because we're on camera. Bless my heart. Hello, Internet. So this session's a little more free flow than some of the ones you've had before in the sense that there's a lot of professional faculties. The crib sheets you've picked up are covering a wide range of things and not an exhaustive list of professional faculties that exist. So we may kind of concentrate on just going over the typical things required for the professional faculties that you indicate you're interested in. No sense in me going through speech pathology to some extent if none of you want to be a speech pathologist. You can always refer to the sheet, find out a bit more about what's out there. But a couple of initial things that are really, really important to keep in mind when thinking about these things. First and foremost, if you have a pen, I want you to mark on this sheet as of June 25th, 2011, because the data on this stuff I was verifying this week. And the fact is that from year to year, these things will change. And when you're thinking about professional faculties, your actual application could be multiple years from now. And so keeping in line and keeping in touch with kind of how these things are changing over time, if any wrinkles come up, is important. None of this information here, with the exception of one tiny weird bit of details, did I get except by going to the websites. In fact, when we're staff here at U of T and in the registrar's office, often when we find out little bits of information about getting into professional faculties, it's often because students come back and tell us about their experiences. So we learn a little bit ourselves from the experience of students that have gone on to these things, which is, of course, an extra other point. In any of these areas, when you're thinking of going to medicine, thinking of law and stuff like that, your resources are going to be more than just the registrar's office. They're going to be at the source, talking to the admissions offices in these various areas, going to information sessions that are on campus every fall, usually, for these professional faculties, and also where you get a chance talking to professionals if you get that opportunity, sometimes even professors. If you're interested in medicine, if you go through life science, if it happens to be the programs you're doing, you may get professors that you guess, and probably guess correctly, may also teach at the Faculty of Medicine. Talk to them about your ambitions and stuff like that. The point being that this is a snapshot of this moment. It's in very broad strokes. It doesn't get all to perhaps all the nifty tricks or details about getting into professional faculties, but it does give you a sense of the kind of scope and range of things that they will be looking for and some of the specifics that you'll have to meet to get into them and such. The other general thing I guess I have to mention, which is probably a cliche, you may have heard it many times before, is that when people come into the university, there are very, very many who have a goal set in mind of a professional faculty. And why not? A lot of these professional faculties represents jobs that in our society have a tremendous amount of prestige. Or if you don't like the word prestige, you can also say money. Some of these jobs are very secure jobs and the society needs them, and there are very attractive ways to kind of reach high ambition and such. Lawyers, doctors, all these other sorts of jobs, many of them here, these are jobs that we recognize as being secure, professional, esteemed jobs. Why wouldn't you want to go for them? But of course, they represent in many respects a very tiny minority of the range of jobs that are out there. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go for them, but the process as you go through the university, whether you have your heart set on one of these or you don't, will be making a lot of discoveries. And so when you're looking at some of these and you're looking at some of their criteria to get into these, which are really high, like nosebleed level marks, and lots and lots of extracurricular activities potentially, well-reasoned personal statements and all these other things. They're really just, they have a very, very sort of competitive edge to try to get into them. And sometimes you have to go through it and try to assess why you want to be what you want to be and reckon it with just how your university experience ends up. It can sometimes be very devastating if a student's interested in something really highfalutin and they just have a terrible first year. Maybe because they just started in some courses they didn't like, some other stuff happened, and they can sometimes feel like it's a real make or break and totally stressed out about it. What I would kind of emphasize is that, first of all, in many cases, perseverance pays off, even if people stumble at first, although it does make it a lot harder. But second, the same philosophy that I would apply here applies in general. Keep your mind and ears and eyes open to the things that could be careers for you. Because the reality is, for all of us when we went through undergraduate stuff, is we didn't necessarily know the job we were going to get, to know the job that we were going to get and love, and such. I didn't go through undergraduate work and think that when I'm done this, I'm going to become an associate registrar at a college. That's going to be great. That's exactly the job I want. But I love this job. And I love this job because it matches my skills, my sets, my passions, and the way I am as a person. And all those are other factors that come into your career thinking. In a way, when you're thinking about professional faculties, you are only a hair's breadth away of asking yourself the big questions. And you'll do it in first year and you'll do it in fourth year. What kind of job do I want? What are the kind of jobs that are going to meet me and make me feel fulfilled? Creatively, passionately, financially, and security for sure. Things that play to my strengths and will make me feel accomplished. And those may even change during your life too, such is the nature of our economy and our society now. Those preambles done. Remember, you can ask any questions if you want. I will try to answer as best you can. These are broad stroke stuff. I wish I had inside information on every admissions policy and every faculty here, but I'll see what I can do. But let's try to go through this, focusing on the ones that you're actually interested in. This is alphabetical. I know it's a very tiny font. Arial narrow lets me get a lot of stuff in. But let's go through it in order, but we'll skip over the ones that if there's no interest in it at all, just because we're very short of time. So, starting with architecture, and hands up anyone who's thinking in those terms. All right, so we're cursed with an ugly city for a few more years. Fine, that's okay. We'll go on to the next one. Business administration, MBA. Nope, all right, good, check. Dentistry. There we go. There you go. One person there. Awesome. So have a look. It's the third column there. Go through it very quickly. This is a program you can try to jump into even when you haven't finished your undergraduate degree. You can have 3 years of undergraduate degree. It's a 4-year program to become a DDS and let you go off and become a dentist. It's a lot like other life science professional programs. So there'll be some similarities to things like medicine in that there are some courses, not a ton of courses that you need to take, but some that are quite precise. So in this one, and by the way, I should also mention, all this data is for the U of T faculties. Of course, when you're shopping around, you're looking ahead, thinking of what professional faculties you'll go to, you're obviously going to look around and compare. You're going to look at U of T, but you're going to look at other places, maybe in Canada, maybe in the States, maybe around the world. So these will give us broad hints of what's going to be required, and you may see the patterns repeated again and again, but they're not universal. There can be different twists and turns in different places, so your ultimate goal is always to research the places you actually want to end up. That caveat ahead of time, now taken care of. So, full credit course in biochemistry. I give you the codes of what it is at U of T. The 210 is the second year biochemistry half course, and then the third year biochemistry half course. That does it for you. A full credit in physiology, and there's a few options there. PSL is the code for physiology courses. There's a 201, which is sort of a basic full credit, 302, which is really common when you're doing life science majors, PSL 302, and Bio 270 plus 271. That pair of half courses together also can do the trick. A very common one as well in a lot of life science courses. So both of these two so far, very easy to pick up naturally if you're actually majoring in something that's in life sciences. And needless to say, the next one's also helpful. And then 2 other full courses in life sciences, anything that qualifies. So in total, the life science, the really condensed part, is only 4 credits there. And also, they want to see a full credit in social science or humanities. Based on the breadth requirements and stuff at U of T, it's going to be kind of hard for you not to do it, but you want to make sure it's there. Also very common in life science things. They don't want you to come out being just strictly speaking a scientist. They want to make sure you have some breadth and such like that. Cumulative grade point average. Looking at a 3.0. That's the minimum. You'll see this too. They'll post a minimum, and then they'll say, but in actuality, what you might need is going to be higher. Because, of course, it's going to be a moving target. Every year, what it ends up being is they get a sense that there's some variety in sort of what the cutoff mark in marks is going to be. Why? Because there may be other factors involved. Did you write a good personal statement? What were your other test scores like and such like that? Plus, it also varies from year to year just because of how competitive it was. If they have a year where they had a lot of applicants for not very many spaces, that's going to drive up the kind of the effective cutoff. So what you see, and this is what I found this year, is they said minimum CGPA of 3, but last year the applicants' average was actually 3.75. So massive gap there, right? When we're talking 3.75, we've tipped over into the A- range and higher. So nosebleed, right? Then I know a little asterisk there, and this is also sometimes common. They will drop the lowest and most recent year if you've done more than 3 years. If you actually finished your undergrad, you've done 4 years, they may drop your lowest year. There's also a special thing for dentists. Why? Dentists shouldn't have shaking hands, so they do a dental aptitude test test, a little sort of a physical dexterity test to make sure people's teeth don't look like, you know, monsters and stuff like that, I guess. And then you can see there, that's the kind of the actual intake last year was about that when they got to the point of interviews, and I guess there's an interview involved, obviously. 190 people for about 70 spots. The deadline's December 1st for this year particularly, and you applied straight to that faculty with a fee. Another sort of crib note about this sheet of paper: if I've given a precise date in 2011 fall, that means that it's up on the website. If I haven't, I've given you what the date was roughly last year, and it will probably stay the same. But another reason to keep like bookmark these websites, check them, go to the information sessions, and make sure you keep up to date with precisely what the requirements were. Actually, you're not going to do this year probably, but I mean, you know, in future years, keeping that sort of stuff in mind. Okay, next one. Let's see. Yes, go ahead.
I actually have a question. You know, is there some sort of a special policy for people that are actually, you know, going to University of Toronto and doing their undergrad there, and then trying to apply for this dentistry? Is there like some sort of special policy for students that are here?
Good question. So the question is, if you're going to U of T and then you're trying to get into dentistry at U of T, anything special that happens? In most cases, no. And you'll see this trend through it. And some places are quite specific. And the Faculty of Medicine is actually highlights it and says, if you're a U of T student and you're trying to go to U of T Medicine, you get no special treatment at all. But the only thing that I've actually encountered, and it's in one of these, and I can't remember which, is that in the one case, if you're a U of T student, your application process is different because they have access to your marks, so you don't have to like order transcripts. It's an internal application process. But I don't think that gives you any special leverage in any of these areas. They are just looking, broadly speaking, at everybody, and you're all competing in the same field in that respect. And that's a truism across the board. Okay, any other questions right now? Let's try law. Hands up if you're interested in law. Okay, a few more there. All right, so law school. Again, you can try to hop in after 3 years if you wish. There's two websites I give in there, the Faculty of Law here at U of T, and also a general law link that's really good, which compiles information about the law schools in Ontario, and actually in Canada. So keep in mind those and check them out. But it's a good thing. Law school is one of those other ones where particularly I have anecdotal experience of people who have persisted and gotten in, despite maybe starting off a bit stumbly. But I'll come to that in a second. What they want, and this is the way you read it in the U of T website, when you're reading the law thing, they do a lot of prose and a lot of numbers. So they talk about kind of what they're interested in without necessarily nailing it down specific cutoffs. So they say things like they want to see a high and consistent CGPA. And they look at the best 3 years of your 4-year program. All that being said, they do say the average for successful applicants was 3.85, so even higher than we were seeing in dentistry. They want to see an LSAT score. LSAT is one of these special field exams that you find are required for admissions into professional faculties. A lot of them have them. LSATs for law, MCATs for medicine, and so forth down the line. So there's a particular percentile there. The last year the average was 95, and they make it quite clear. Basically, if you have a CGPA of less than 3.7, so under the A- range, and an LSAT of under the 90th percentile, it's very unlikely for you to get in. Why is there variety? Well, law school in particular has a lot of variety because there are a lot of factors going into an application and such. There is an applicant profile that you fill in. No interviews, but a profile detailing your extracurricular, your volunteer, all sorts of activities that you've done. You can send letters of reference in, but they may not include them. So it's a weird thing. I guess if you have them, you can send them in if you want, but don't consider them something that's going to necessarily make or break you getting into them. They could very well just ignore them and concentrate on the other stuff. What they do check out, though, is this profile and personal statement stuff. And I want to talk a bit about that because this is also a skill that's transferable into other different law schools or even into things like graduate school. If you are able to talk about yourself and your interest in the profession with a level of articulateness and some sense of knowledge, that will stand you in a large stead. If you're able to kind of say why you want to be in this profession, what it means to you, how it fits into the kinds of things you've done in your life, and what you consider important to you, that can make a huge difference. This is the story I have. I have a friend who did her undergraduate career, and her marks were okay. They weren't great, but they were okay. But they weren't nosebleeds, so she wasn't getting into a law school on that. But she really, really wanted to be a lawyer. So she left school and became a law clerk and worked in a law firm and got to know the business. Talked to lawyers all the time. Got to understand the law better, working within that industry, and kept applying and reapplying, trying to keep doing the LSATs until she got an awesome score, and kept applying and kept refining her statements. And eventually she got to the point where her marks were no longer holding her back. She was able to get in despite the fact that it, as a component of her application, was never going to be as competitive as some from other people. But she made up for it in the other stuff, the subjective stuff, the personal stuff, the stuff that says why I want to do it, why I know this business and why it will be an asset to this professional organization. And that's what did it for her. So it's an example of two things. One, persistence pays off. Even if you may start what you think is a significant disadvantage that may not get you into a degree. But the second thing it tells you is you better have the willpower to do it. Because if you don't have the stomach for doing it again and again and again and learning as you go along to make it better and better, then you don't have the willpower to do it. It may be that cut and dry. You may be needing to think about something else. And that's really the tension about these sorts of things all the way through, right? As you go through life, you're going to be constantly playing out. What have I done? How have I been successful? And how much is it going to make or break in these very competitive areas? And what do I want to do? That I don't, and this sounds really glib and philosophical, but that's life. And you're going to encounter it whether you're doing this or whether you're kind of trying to figure out what your majors are or any other things in your career. If you're honest with yourself, both in terms of your strengths, weaknesses, and your passions, that's what you're going to take to try to carve out the path for yourself. Whether you're going to be the next lawyer that I'm going to be hiring when I hit a car, or whether you're going to choose a different path in your life that still speaks to you and makes you do the things that really are important to you. Deadline notice for law school pretty early, November. So in your whatever year you're thinking of it, you've probably been preparing for about a year. You've probably been doing LSATs for about a year, trying to get good at it. You've probably been talking to people about what kind of things you want to do, work on your statement, and hopefully you have the marks to pull it off. And you may end up, like my friend, trying a few times if it works out that way. Yes?
I have a question for the average.
Yeah.
I hear from people, they're not really important people, but they say, like, oh, don't go to U of T if you want to do law school because U of T grades harder than, I don't know, like York. Is this considered in the application? You have a 3.5 undergrad at U of T and then a 3.5 at York. Would they weigh?
It's a very salient question, but not with ones easily answered because it does walk in things. Just for anyone who didn't hear, or the internet, hello, the question was, the sort of anecdotes have it that U of T marks harder, and so that can be a real grade difference. Does U of T law care that you come out of law here, or undergraduate here versus elsewhere? Do they make any accommodations for that? As I understand it, no. So in fact, if people are convinced by this anecdotal stuff that U of T marks harder and they get better marks somewhere else, sometimes they make the strategic choice to go somewhere else. I won't lie. I think some people do operate that way. What I've never been able to pin down is how much of truism this actually is. The perception is certainly there in a lot of cases. I don't know, and I don't think the law school makes any sense, and gives any indication that they treat anyone any differently and such. But there are things to do. I mean, do students mention them in personal statements? They might. They might. If I was applying to law school and I took a really hard program and I thought I could have done easier ones, but I went for a hard one, I think if I was writing in my personal statement, I might say, I'm sorry, I'm not a 4.0, but I wanted to challenge myself, and this is what I gained out of those challenges. And that might be the kind of wrinkle that could be a factor in what creates the variety. But let's also face it on the other side. The law school at U of T wants to get people from all around. If they make those sorts of concessions all the time, then it becomes really inconsistent. And if you got like 3,000 people trying to get 300 spots, then the CGPA cutoff is probably still going to be just high. It's just going to be hard to avoid, right? There's not many room to make all those kind of concessions that you might want to for interesting profiles. It doesn't mean try to put that stuff in, but let's face it, this is going to be part of your economic calculations. I would really hope that a student would never go to a place that they weren't as happy with to do marks just to get the good marks, and then it end up not paying off. Then I would think you would end up getting the worst of two worlds in a way by having done that. Okay, let's keep going because I'm still looking ahead. So continuing up, I'm pretty sure I know someone here who wants, medicine. Anyone here want to be a doctor? That's right. I noticed the hands went up really slow. Like, I guess I still want to be a doctor after you've been talking that way? Okay, well, you can see that the text on this part is massive. Similar sort of kind of vibes that we've been getting already. Marks, yes. Big thing about med school is they have what they advertise as a very particular kind of weighting process. They convert your grades into a variation of the 4.0 scale called the OSMA scale. For my purposes, it's close enough that I wouldn't worry about it. Your CGPA at U of T is going to be pretty close to that cumulative grade point average. But they're interested if you do a full course load, so every fall-winter session of your 4 years, or 3 years, if you decide to hop out after 3 years, if you've been doing a 5-course load, they will give you a special bit of dispensation. And that means that they're going to drop your lowest grade 1 credit per year. So if you did 4 years, 5 courses for every fall-winter session. They don't care about the summers, by the way. 5 courses in each one. They will drop your lowest 4 credits. If you hop in at 3, they'll drop your lowest 3 and such like that. So life science students often make a special point of trying to take that 5-course load and keep that 5-course load going through. It lends to certain strategies going through, but the payoff can be great because then if if something does go sour, but otherwise everything else is rocking, then you still may have a way to sort of make it pay out and such like that. And it can obviously do a big conversion. If you are doing less than 5, you have to accept that you're going to be weighed straight on. What are your grades and what's the CGPA going to be? And it needs to be high. So there they go. They say the weighted average or average otherwise 3.6 and such like that. Again, this one, they're pretty vague about what the actual grade was, but I think you can assume that 3.6 is needed to be competitive. A bit like dentistry, but actually, weirdly enough, they require fewer life science courses than dentistry. You just need 2. That are basically pure life science. So they're not thinking chemistry or biochemistry, they're thinking pure life science, 1 credit in humanities and social sciences, and a really good MCAT score. There's another one of those tests and such that they do. Here, an autobiographical sketch. They actually call it that, an autobiographical sketch. It's in resume form, but basically you have to say, what have you been doing since you were age 16? And so what's going to be the strategies there? Well, you're going to tell them what you're going to do, but they're going to be interested because it's a profile. What person have you become over that time? Have you been volunteering? What's gotten you interested in medicine? Was it something you did earlier in your life, things in your family and so forth? That's all a factor, and it makes a difference. And there's no, and you actually also have to include verifiers. So if they can call up someone and say, is it true that this person, volunteered in this hospital over this summer and so forth and so on. So that's there. And that's just the sketch. We haven't got to the essay yet. So about why you want to become a doctor. And it sounds like the kind of essay you might get after, how I spent my summer holidays, but they take it really seriously. And a bit like law school, the more refined, the more articulate, the more passionate and informed you are in this, the better. So in your time as a university student, get your awesome marks, but really come to understand yourself and why you want to do this. It will help you out a great deal. Again, thousands of people apply. It comes down to 224 spots last year. So it's about 1 in 10, probably a little less, that actually get in. So pretty competitive. These deadlines are already up. So this is typical for a year. Very early in the fall, you start to create this. It's an online application. You create your profile for the online application. You get a lot of the stuff in early October, and the follow-up documentation comes in December and such. And that's and this is not uncommon for medical schools. Question? Yeah.
For most of the schools, ask 3 years undergraduate studies and you can apply. Let's say one person has all the other conditions, finish 3 years, and then apply law or medicine or dentistry. How long it takes to enter the school? For example, if the 3rd year finishes on April, and when the student applies, and when it has the other condition, when the person will enter to the school, for example, by September or by next year, how long?
My understanding is there's one only time of entry in a particular year. So looking at, say, U of T medicine, you're applying in the fall period. If you finished in early April, you finished 2 years earlier, it doesn't make any difference. There's one season to apply. So you have to wait around until the calendar comes around, until it's early fall of whatever year to make your application to medicine. There's not an application on a rolling basis. They do it in a very precise period of the year, and you can't be late.
Okay, I mean, the 3rd year finishes and then applies?
No, not necessarily. If you're, well, let's put it this way. Let's say you're in your fourth year, but you're doing a fourth year, but you're trying to apply to get in, or you're in the middle of your third year. You'll be trying to apply while you're doing your courses, right? Because it'll be the fall. Like if someone's coming to third year right now in a life science, they're applying this fall to go into next fall while they're finishing their third year.
Okay, but then when the students are in the third year, can apply for the next year to enter to the professionals.
I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean if they miss 1 year, when do they come around again to apply again?
The student finishes second year and in third year can apply in order to
I think you have to work backwards from what they're looking for. If you're applying to it, you have to make sure that by the time they're looking at your application, you better be in the right spot of your degree. So if you're in the middle of your third year, fine, because you're applying on the basis of that you're going to be done third year, but by the time you have to roll in to actually join the medical school, right? Or in the middle of your fourth year, if you're hoping to do it after you've graduated with your 4-year degree. So if you work backwards and anticipate what do they need to see and what do I have to have done to get in, then that gives you an indication of what points where it's relevant. So there's no reason to apply in your first year. There's no way you're going to be done, nor in your second year. It really only starts to become relevant as you're in that year that when it's finished could allow you to get into the program, basically. All right, any other questions about medical school? Yes.
Can we go back to architecture?
Architecture. Oh, okay. Yes, I started there. Yes, very quick. Do you want me just to go over it very quickly? Okay. Professional architects require a certification, and so there are professional degrees. Some universities have a Bachelor of Architecture, but we don't. We have architectural studies. Here, the faculty is a master's program. And there are two varieties, Master's in Architecture and a Master's in Landscape Architecture, which two different types of certification, different types of profession, but kind of obviously sharing in the same sort of thing. Both of them here require you finish the 4-year degree before you actually get in the door and such. And there's usually a set of years and some internship. And the internship is something that's required for the certification in society and the professional organization and such. The coursework and stuff comes through the actual program itself. Here you can see that in U of T's case, both these types of masters, same kind of requirements with only a tiny bit of variety. A mid-B average in their final year, courses that you need to have done, you have to have your high school physics and calculus, but not much more than that. And if you want your master's in architecture, you also need at least one course in architectural design. That's this course, ARC 132. It also can sometimes help, though, to have done architectural studies at U of T because you also have to turn in a portfolio. And so actually doing design architecture-related courses at U of T, or if not, doing it off on the side, will actually help you learn the kind of software and such to be able to hand in a portfolio when you actually want to try to get in. Statement of interest, so a lot of common themes. State of interest, why do I want to become an architect? 3 writing samples, so here, so communication skills are also very, very critical, and our portfolio, and 3 letters of reference. So basic sort of stuff. Masters in Landscape Architecture, pretty much the same except no specific course requirement, so a little bit broader in that respect. And so the path goes, you have 2 different master's programs, and then you go off to do internship and get work experience to get your actual certification to become a professional architect or professional landscape architect several years into doing work experience after that. So like a lot of these actual things, there's a process where when you're moving out from the actual formal education into the world, the certification comes kind of after some work experience. It's sort of a theme you get in many respects in a lot of these, like in medical school too, when you become an intern, right? You start serving and working after the degree's done to get your specialty and such like that. All right, yes? Not as clear about how internships work, but I think when you enter the program it'll probably help. But I think it's probably a good thing to ask at an information session. How do internships work? My feeling is that a lot of them, they're kind of streamlined in the process. As you're doing your coursework and such, you'll learn a lot about how to kind of set yourself placed into a workforce. I think companies, for example, in architecturally speaking, will hire people who come out and then they will work in the context of being, in a way, an associate, but not a fully licensed sort of person to be called a professional, speaking of architecture, professional architect and stuff. So you find a company to do your experience and do your time and such, paid probably, but paid until you've gotten that point where then you can take the next step and become and apply for yourself for the full membership in the professional association. All right, I know we don't have very much time here, so I'm being a bit brisk. Let's see how we do. Nurses, anyone nursing? Okay, if you change your mind, you have this sheet of paper. Occupational science and occupational therapy. Check. Pharmacy, there we go. I knew it was in pharmacy. Okay, at U of T, the Faculty of Pharmacy, you need 2 years of undergraduate stuff. And a fairly specific roster of courses you need to do and such. It's a 4-year program. You get your Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy when you get through it. Looking through here, B- or 70% cumulative average. You must have carried at least a full course load for one of your academic sessions, one of your fall-winter academic sessions. And then there's a long list of courses, which we've listed out here that is very specific. So you can kind of see that if you're going to do 2 years here, you look like you probably want to set yourself up as a life science student, or at least a biochemist or a chemist, because you're looking for the first year bios, the first year calculus. Sorry, that math 135Y should be 135H plus 136H. The course changed recently. Your 2 chemistry courses, your second year organic and inorganic chemistry, that's Chem 247 and Chem 220. Biochemistry, full credit from the humanities and social sciences. That's right, they still want to make sure you can write. And some stats. So a pretty full roster actually in your 2 years or whatever else. They do a special exam, the PCAT, which is usually, it's offered about 3 or 4 times a year, but if you're coming into sort of a January, you have to have written it no later than the early part of that January, so it's in and part of your application. They also do these little things that other faculty do called multiple mini interviews. It's a weird interview process where you basically spend 7 minutes on a station, and each one is giving you a very specific sort of a contextual sort of question, a scenario, and ask and figure out how you respond to it. It sounds very interesting. I'm not sure there's much to prepare about it. Get a sense of the lay of the land, but it's a part of another way to help sort of filter things out. Deadline tends to be early in the winter, so later than what we've been seeing, mid-January. The application is through the Faculty of Pharmacy. It's a fairly common one. It's more and more popular. We're seeing it, so it's a much more rigorous in terms of preparation. You have to be very clear to hit the checklist of courses, but that also kind of leaves less for the guessing, right? You got to get those marks, get those courses under, and try to make yourself a competitive applicant. You don't have to do it just after second year, but the minimum of 2 years of undergraduate work before you move into that. Questions? Okay. Physiotherapists, anyone? Anyone interested in radiation sciences? Yes, someone wants to become a superhero. Come on, Spider, get radioactive. Okay, here we go. This is actually in partnership with U of T and the Michener Institute, which is the Michener Institute deals with applied sciences in health. And in fact, these are just 3 programs, three streams within radiation sciences that are actually one part of a bunch of programs that Michener does actually on its own. So if you have other career notions in the health sciences, checking out that website is good because they have a lot of kind of diploma and sort of certificate programs that also take you into lots of niche areas in healthcare and such. This is a 1-year undergraduate requirement, and as you can see, switching over to the last box, fairly straightforward. B- average, and at least a C- in particular courses. If you want to go into nuclear medicine, you need your C- in a bio, math, and physics, and of course you should have your grade 12 chemistry in the background. Radiation therapy, bio, math, physics. Radiation technology, bio, math, or stats, and physics. So a lot of very similar stuff here, and deadline is later in the spring, and it's an internal application from the U of T website if you're a U of T student. And this gets you a kind of a Bachelor of Science degree with the sort of with the diploma in the Michener Institute. So it's a kind of a more collaborative process and such to get you a kind of a professional accolade as well as an undergraduate program, 3 years once you've joined and such. Very straight, in many respects, very sort of cut and dry, straightforward. Check out these links and stuff that I've been giving. Any other questions? I realize we're kind of going over time, so I want to make sure that you understand A, useful document, but a beginning document. It's a snapshot now. May not be true in 1 year from now, certainly probably not in 3 years, and it's no substitute for talking to people in the know. Go to information sessions. We'll advertise them, but starting as early September, all these professional faculties do information sessions dotted all around the campus. Oh wait, I forgot about the last sheet. Sorry. Who wants to be a speech-language pathologist? Teacher. There we go. Okay, let's do teaching. There are 2 kind of avenues to teaching. There's something called the concurrent teaching program. It's a very particular sort of line or alley to get into teaching that's actually also collaborative with being an undergraduate student. And what happens is after first year, there's 2 subject posts that you can try to apply for to get into. And if you get into those posts, you actually enter into a kind of a combined continuation of your undergraduate degree to end up with basically a Bachelor of Education combined with your a regular undergraduate degree. The 2 posts are offered in 2 different colleges. Anyone can apply. It doesn't matter that they're in those colleges. But in St. Mike's College, it's a major program called Christianity and Culture as related to a major in religious education. You get into that program, you're kind of streaming and planning to try to teach, I believe, high school and probably in the Catholic school board system here in Ontario. The minor in Victoria University or Victoria College is called Education Society. It's a minor program. It has slightly more specific course requirements, and it's listed here, including psych and another at least a half credit from a list of social sciences. And it tends to teach more about sort of developmental stuff, and it aims you to teach for younger kids later on. And unlike regular subject posts at U of T, if you get into this, they monitor your grades in a much more systematic way. There's effectively the level of being able to be considered in good standing or on probation is higher. It's a 2.5 rather than say a 1.5 for the faculty. And so you're kind of monitored and stay within the program and such. But obviously super efficient if you get into it. You can only apply after first year. So if you want it, you should plan for it now because then you can, because it gives you some of the experience and all that stuff you need. And it's almost a I wouldn't say co-op program, but it has the qualities of that experience plus the multiple layers of education you're doing to become a teacher all sort of mingled together as you go along, being a faculty of arts and science student and essentially an education student. The consecutive program is something you apply for after you have an undergraduate degree. The listing's there, 15 best credits, a B average, though an A average will make you more competitive. You throw in a profile, similar kind of deal we've been seeing. Tell me about yourself, what's your experience, what's your relevant experience, why do you want to be a teacher, what kind of teacher you want to be, what level and such. Volunteer and work or experience can be critical here because if you have really salient, like I have worked with kids, I have done this and that, super important in that sense. They're also interested in what they call the teaching subjects, which used to be called teachables. You have to be able to kind of show blocks of understanding as you're undergraduate to say, I could teach this, and there are specific rules about that. Often get the question, are there teachable areas that are more kind of current than others? And I think you're going to hear a lot of things. But what I got from OISE, which is U of T's place that teaches education, they said, well, French is always good. After that, it's up in the air. There's no real sort of inside thing that you ought to learn to make yourself a really obvious teacher and so like you can get yourself in. But you're going to hear rumors back and forth about that. But I think the bottom line is study what you love, and you know, French can't hurt, and kind of work yourself through that way. Rest there, applicant profile and such like that, and then you can see there it's a December application period as well. So I'll come back to my parting remarks. Snapshot of now will change. Talk to people. Talk to profs you like, especially if you think they're profs that can know something about the profession you're interested in. Find family friends who are in the profession and talk to them. The more you know about why you want to do what you want to do, you'll be able to sell yourself to the admissions people who are going to look at you, and you may become to even more ever maturing, ever developing, ever more personally satisfying choices about the job you want. Thanks so much. Now, please, if you haven't filled out those...